What is going on, traders? It's Johnny here with Trader X. Thank you guys so much for tuning back into the channel. I really do appreciate your time. And as usual, I'm going to go ahead and get right into today's recap. And so as you guys can see from the screen, unfortunately, today wasn't a very productive day in terms of my day trading, right? I was only up about $20 on SQQQ and down $8 on TQQQ, right? So I am, super grateful to at least end green, but I just felt like I could have done a much better job executing my trades today. And so these were all my filled orders, right? You guys can see the timestamps on the left of when I was trading, the quantity I was trading with, and then the ETF that I was trading right here in the middle. That's there for your reference, but I'm going to go ahead and get right into today's recap. So in terms of what I wanted to talk about today the market was very choppy, right? And it traded similar to yesterday. So as you guys can tell from yesterday, I ended up losing a lot of money, and it's partially due to the fact that I didn't do a good job of identifying the support and resistance levels on the day, right? So we have been seeing this huge downtrend on the Nasdaq, and so it's been absolutely rallying for SQQQ. And now that yesterday we were trading sideways, heading into today, I did anticipate that we were going to trade sideways again, right? Because whenever the Nasdaq, has a nice run or a nice sell-off, when it eventually does find a support level, it ends up consolidating for a period of a few days, right? So that's why heading into today, I was kind of expecting it to be choppy as well, but that obviously doesn't mean that it had to be choppy, right? And so what I saw going on with the Nasdaq was right at market open, you guys can see is when or is this increase in volume bars, right? And it pretty much ended up driving the price of the Nasdaq down. And I wanted to approach it similar to how it traded yesterday. So I tried, identifying, general support and resistance areas. And given the fact of where it was trading at and how it sold off all the way to the bottom VWAP, I thought that we were actually gonna be trading more closer to the bottom VWAP as the day went on, but that actually didn't end up being the case, right? So as you guys can see, it approached bottom VWAP right at market open, but it never did so throughout the remainder of the day. And the reason why I thought it was going to be approaching the bottom VWAP again was, I identified this general resistance area from yesterday, right? And it had a general support area right around here. And so as this thing was, struggling to really break above the top VWAP here, I thought that because of the fact that this area here was more of a support area, right? Heading into yesterday, I thought that this support area was now going to act as a more of a resistance, right? As we traded today, but that ultimately didn't end up being the case, right? So as you guys will notice, this thing ended up selling off to bottom VWAP. It ended up becoming choppy, right? And recovered all the way to top VWAP, got rejected. And so somewhere around this area, right? As this thing sold off and then tried to pick back up, I tried getting into SQQQ, thinking that this thing was going to eventually approach the bottom VWAP again, right? So I was prepared, to let this thing, like normally my trades don't last very long, but when it came to trading today, I knew since it was going to be choppy, I was really going to try to focus on general, areas where it was a good deal and where I should probably lock in profits. So as this thing would shoot up really fast, I tried getting into SQQQ, and I thought, this thing was going to ultimately get closer to the bottom VWAP, but that's not what happened, right? This thing actually ended up, breaking above the middle VWAP, approached the top VWAP, and right around this area, it got rejected again, right? And as this thing got rejected, it didn't end up selling off to bottom VWAP like I expected. This thing actually ended up rallying on the day, right? So there was a pretty good TQQQ play, right, when it came down to buying down here, and that's something I should have focused on more, to be honest. I should have realized that this thing was bouncing off bottom VWAP yesterday, and although I felt like the general support area could be the new resistance area today, what I should have done is focus more on the bigger picture and said to myself, well, this thing was bouncing off the bottom VWAP, right? So I should wait for this thing to approach the bottom VWAP to try to get into TQQQ. And so, but that's ultimately what ended up, leading me to not having a very effective day. So although I was able to end green, I could have made a lot more money if I had just focused on TQQQ and try to ride this thing up rather than try to focus on SQQQ, because as you guys know, this thing never ended up selling off all the way down to where I expected it to. So that was pretty unfortunate, but I should have done a better job of seeing that, okay, as this thing was becoming bullish on the day, I could have tried taking part in that TQQQ run. But to be honest, the reason why I didn't was I wasn't very comfortable with it because as this thing approached the top VWAP, it did get rejected. And that also made me, think that this thing was going to start to sell off, but that's not what ended up happening. It ended up actually pushing up, super high up to the top VWAP, became overextended, and then sold off. And so what I ended up doing was I bought into SQQQ, and I actually did a very poor job of managing my risk on this one. So I bought into SQQQ right around these areas, right, as this thing would shoot up quick. I believe I got in right around this area, right? So closer to top VWAP. I personally thought that was a smart play because of the fact that it's been getting rejected before at top VWAP. And as this thing sold off, it actually ended up bouncing and riding the EMA line all the way up, right? So this thing continued to climb, and I did a horrible job of cutting losses. I actually never did cut losses on it. But the beautiful part about it, I guess, is that I was only in with a 25% position size, meaning that I wasn't completely devastated with this thing running the way it did, right? I was okay with this thing running because it wasn't that big of a hit on the account and in terms of, the trade. And so as this thing did approach this area and became more overextended, I actually decided to add another $1,000 worth. So I was in with about $2,500 in SQQQ right around here. And as it continued to climb, I really did, see lots of value in SQQQ and a potential NASDAQ reversal. So I went ahead and added $1,000 to SQQQ, but that is something I definitely would not recommend because of the fact that I still didn't really have good indication that this thing was going to sell off. What I could have done a better job of was, waiting for this thing to break below EMA and then adding, right? So I did add prematurely, but I was willing to take that risk, right? And I also had an idea in mind of where I was actually going to cut losses, given the fact that I was averaging up and I didn't want to, you know, have a devastating, loss on the day. And so as this thing ended up reversing, right, I thought we were going to end up approaching bottom VWAP. So I was waiting to sell at around these general support area, but that's not what ended up happening, right? As we know in the stock market, you can take a trade, but it doesn't mean that it will always go according to plan. So as this thing was aggressively selling off, I thought it looked pretty good and that we were going to end up approaching these levels, but it ended up bouncing on middle VWAP, right? Started to recover, then it got rejected and tried to sell off again. And then I was pretty excited here. I thought we were finally going to start to sell off, and I was going to be able to make a decent profit on the day. But that's not what happened. This thing reversed. And then by the time it came close to, market close, this thing ended up selling off back down to middle VWAP. And I decided to just cut it there, right? I decided to cut my entire trade there on SQQQ, given the fact that I was seeing it, bounce off the middle VWAP twice before. And I would have been pretty mad at myself if this thing ended up bouncing and I ended up red on the day because of that. And so that's why I decided to lock it in there. It wasn't obviously for much profit, and it's because of the fact that I bag held my initial entry, right? So as I got in around the top VWAP, I didn't sell out. I didn't cut losses, so I was down all of this, right? As this thing approached top VWAP, I was down probably close to 2%. So I definitely should have done a way better job of managing my risk. But the fact that I was able to add up here, and then this thing ended up selling and correcting itself back to middle VWAP is what ultimately led me to making back the money I lost and, a little bit on top. So in terms of, yeah, my day trading performance, I personally felt like I could have done a better job of, getting into TQQQ, maybe closer to the bottom down here. That would have been a really nice play. But like I mentioned, I was too focused on trying to get into SQQQ at these more overbought levels, which there's not really anything wrong with that. It's just unfortunate that it didn't play out right the way I expected. I was expecting it to approach closer to these, general support areas, but that's not what happened, right? So in terms of my trading, I feel like tomorrow I will be, trying to look out to see whether or not it's going to trade sideways again or if it's going to finally start to choose a direction, right? Because on the 180-day chart, what you guys will notice is the 180-day EMA typically tends to act as a support when the Nasdaq is rallying, right? But as we know, when this thing is in a bear market and it's selling off, the EMA will act as a resistance, right? And so ultimately we did sell off all the way down to the SMA line and we are testing the EMA, right? So I'm expecting this thing to maybe trade sideways or it could start to sell off or it could push up, right? So no one really knows what's going to happen. That's why we have to, take it day by day and wait and see what will occur. But one thing I did want to point out is as the Nasdaq was selling off, right, for months and months and months, whenever it would approach the green line, which is the SMA line, right, it would get rejected, right? You guys can see it would get rejected around here, around here, around here, around here. And so anytime it approached it, it'd get rejected. And so now that we finally broke above the SMA, and now we are testing around the SMA, there is a good chance that it could act as a support now, right? Because things in the stock market that acted as a previous resistance level can act as a new support level. So we could potentially see this thing bounce here, but that doesn't mean it has to, right? It could, for all we know, get rejected and continue to sell off because big picture, right, we're still pretty much downtrending, right? It has those periods of time where it recovers for a bit, but it ends up selling off. It recovers, and now we're at that stage, where we're trying to see what's going to happen. And so I am, excited for that and looking forward to that. And so that is also another reason why I haven't added to my Tesla position, right? So as you guys know, I still only have 2 shares in Tesla, and Tesla itself is trading around the $900 price point, right? So I'm also ultimately waiting for the Nasdaq to indicate more signs of an uptrend for me to feel comfortable averaging up into Tesla. And yeah, that's pretty much my game plan with that. In terms of something else I wanted to talk about, I did want to mention Nordstrom stock. So for those of you who don't know, Nordstrom had earnings yesterday, and it caused this thing to absolutely tank, right? And if we look at the news articles regarding it, pretty much the reason why it fell is, news articles are saying that there was a lot of demand that decreased with Nordstrom, and specifically in their, rack stores. So the Nordstrom rack stores, they're pretty much more of a clearance item store, right, where they sell clearance items for cheap. But they've actually been seeing a huge decrease in demand, and consumers wanting to buy the stuff there. And so that's worrisome for the stock itself, and that's ultimately what caused this thing to drop significantly, right? So from where it closed at yesterday at around $23, it is now trading closer to $18, right? So it is down 20%, which is a pretty significant amount. But yeah, I do want you guys to know it had, the reason why this thing happened is because of the fact of that, negative guidance that was reported after earnings, right? So the guidance was pretty much saying that due to the decrease in demand with everything, they are expecting to lose, around $200 million in revenue. And so that's what led to this negative catalyst, right? So now, unfortunately, the stock is down 20%, as I mentioned. On the bigger time frame, it's honestly not at a bad deal, in my opinion, right? You guys can tell it does have general support areas right around here, right? And then it has general resistance areas right around here. And so this thing is obviously at more of a support level, but on the even bigger time frame, what you guys will notice is this thing actually is at the lowest point it's been in a year. So the fact that it did break below the support can mean it has a chance it could continue to drop, but it's definitely not at a bad deal. And as you guys know, the stock itself, if you look at it on the bigger picture, this thing has traded at $83 before, right? And as you guys can tell, this thing is continuously downtrending, given all everything that's happening with the economy right now. So but the beauty about this is Nordstrom is a pretty reputable company, and given the fact that the stock is down so much, that means it has lots of room to recover, right? So from where it's at to if it were to recover to previous highs, that would be a really, really insane move, right? So it's trading around $19, and it had previous highs of $83. Just imagine that type of return, right? That's over a 300% return it offers, which is absolutely crazy, and it should be exciting for you guys. But that doesn't mean that you guys should just blindly buy the stock now, right? You guys always want to make sure if you buy into something before confirmation of an uptrend, you always want to make sure that it's with a smaller dollar amount, because of the fact that it's still not, you don't have indications that it's going to recover just yet, right? It probably makes more sense to add to something once it starts to indicate signs of an uptrend, right? What I mean is, like, this thing will have sell off, but when it breaks above the EMA, it starts to ride the EMA line up, right? It'll push up, pull back, push up, pull back, and it'll kind of, do that, like that upward staircase pattern. And so as this thing is selling off now, you are taking a big risk by buying in here, especially because it just broke that previous support, right? So this thing could continue to sell given all the selling pressure that's surrounding the stock, but at the same time, like I mentioned, there is, a pretty big return in ROI that it offers if it does end up recovering. So that is the beauty about it. and I did want to make you guys aware of that. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about today. I hope you guys all ended green and were able to enjoy your day. If you guys are new to the channel, we really do appreciate you guys dropping a like and subscribing. It really helps us out a lot. But other than that, if you guys have any questions at all, want me to break down any stock, or want me to make any stock video at all, just go ahead and drop a comment and I will do my best to make a video. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I want to talk about. I hope you guys all are enjoying your day, and I will be posting a recap tomorrow, so I will see you guys then. Take care.